Yes. Yo, my people, it is your host with the most, NK, aka the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, and we are back for another edition of Commissioner's Corner. For those who are probably wondering in the comment sections, Knowledge will not be able to make it tonight, but no fear, because this is the reunion of the centuries. For the guys who tuned in to Ace Techers, me and SP3 are back. You might have seen SP3 on many episodes of Revolution Radio, but yeah, we're with SP3. How are you doing, sir?
I am so glad to be here. It is me, the True Hill Phenom, SP3, the new media forbidden door, the Jerome YouTube. Because I'm the blackest brother who's on wrestling YouTube. There's nobody as black on YouTube as much as me. So I am glad to be on the best UK-based wrestling content, wrestling channel out there, Rest Things, and this Ace Techers reunion with my good brother NK, the best talker in the game. Let's talk
Hey,
about it.
hey. I could see the Dwayne inspiration. I still feel like you haven't recovered from WrestleMania because that was a hell of a promo, man.
Oh man, the way done got me started, man. If you haven't been seeing me on content, I've been very ranterific, and I
Yeah.
blame a lot on that on my former stepfather, Dwayne Johnson. Because yes, my mom legitimately, when she found out The Rock returned, she was like, "You remember that's your dad, right?" Because he used to tell me when I was a kid that my stepdad that lived with us was only there because The Rock had to travel around the world, and he was my real dad.
So technically, you should be on SmackDown because
I,
you should be on SmackDown because the bloodline, like the
I
family.
mean,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I mean, it's only
I am a part of the text. I told people I'm part of the $7 text line. I announced this earlier today on Fightful. So I'm now going to be doing reporting based on the text feed. And earlier today, I spoiled the main event for WrestleMania 41, as well as what's going to happen to build to the main event of WrestleMania 41. I don't know if the wrestling's community is ready for that. I know
Mhm.
they came to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, but just so you know, I'm part of the $7 text chain.
Insider information. We got the scoops. But yeah, man, we ain't here to discuss WrestleMania. We are here to discuss New Japan Pro Wrestling. They recently had their most recent pay-per-view, Windy City Riot, which took place in the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. Um, According to WrestleTix, they distributed over 6,000 tickets, which I believe that makes it the biggest New Japan show in the States that's not a Forbidden Door
Yeah.
show. Yeah, man, that's some big business for New Japan, and you can obviously say credit that show to some of the big stars, some big matches on the card, and the working relationship they got with AEW. I'm sure that definitely added towards the ticket sales, but there are some big matches on the card, some super big matches. Before the pay-per-view started, what match were you looking forward to seeing the most? Like before the pay-per-view started?
Oh, I was looking forward to the scapegoat. The
Mm,
scapegoat, Jack Perry. That was the match I was looking forward to the most because of, the response he was going to get in Chicago was already going to be big. And then what happened on Wednesday with
mm,
AEW rolling the tape, I was like, all right, there's only one person who could benefit from this that is currently signed to an AEW contract, and it's Jack Perry. And what we saw on Friday, actually for the first time since they rolled the tape on Dynamite, I was like, did it actually work?
mm.
So I was looking forward to watching it before the show, and then what I saw, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's get straight into it. I'll be full transparency with the audience. I haven't managed to watch the show in its entirety. I saw the main event. I saw, the Jack Perry entrance, but I haven't watched the show in its entirety. So I can't give you a full, honest breakdown of the show. But shameless plug, who can give you a full breakdown of the show? Indie Takers. make sure you tune into the next episode of Indie Takers on Wrestlings, where they will give you the comprehensive breakdown of Windy City Riot. But you know who has seen the show? SP3. SP3, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Windy City Riot as a whole? And feel free to talk about some key moments that you feel need the spotlight they deserve.
Well, to kind of give like the overall thoughts, I would say that this is the best US show that New Japan has done this year. And I was very high on Battle in the Valley, me and NK. That was when we were doing Ace Techers. We got to talk about that, and we were all very excited, very happy with Battle in the Valley. But when I looked at it, kind of I slept on after watching the Windy City Riot, and I reflected back on Battle in the Valley. Battle in the Valley is going to be remembered for the double main event. It's going to be remembered for Moxley and Shingo and Ospreay and Okada, those final two matches, and maybe even Gabe Kidd versus Kingston, which was right before that the Shingo and Moxley matchup. This was a better overall show because there was multiple things that stood out on the show. Like I said, looking forward to the show. I was looking for the reaction Jack Perry was going to get and his matchup with Shota Umino. I was also looking forward to Jon Moxley versus Tetsuya Naito. Coming out of the show, those two matches delivered, but not only that, you had Azumi, who had the best weekend of anyone of Joshi Wrestling, really standing out, kind of had an opportunity to steal the show at Windy City Riot and definitely stole the show on Collision with her matchup with Timeless Toni Storm, finding her working boots in the Stardom locker room and bringing it over to the US. And then she tore it up with Stephanie Vaquer, who is like, Stephanie Vaquer, my best comparison to Stephanie Vaquer in the ring. She is 2015 NXT Sasha Banks. Everything she does has a purpose. It looks violent. It looks like it hurts, and it looks nasty. And I love Stephanie Vaquer for it. So her style mixed with Azumi, who's a very fast-paced, can do a little bit of high flying, but just picks up the pace, can do submission and different pins. It just worked really well. And I thought this was one of the best women's matches they've had on one of their New Japan Strong shows. And then you get to the fourth match on the card and you get Jack Perry with that entrance. And you said you saw the entrance, but dude, I've never done a 180 off of an entrance because I want to remind everyone. Does anyone want to remember Jack Perry's first promo after he turned heel last summer? It was awful. He showed no charisma. It was paint by the numbers. You could have said he was reading from a teleprompter. Shout out to the homie Sat. He had no charisma, Jack Perry, when he first turned heel. And after Windy City Riot, after seeing that show and seeing his match with Shota Umino, it made me think that the best decision he made with his career was saying, "It's real glass, cry me a river." That might have been the best decision of his career because now 8 months later, he feels like a well-developed, well-fleshed out heel who just took all the energy from those Chicago fans and he was giving it right back to him. He had the boatload of charisma. And not only that, his instincts was on cue when the fans are cheating. You got choked out. No, he didn't. You got choked out. No, he didn't. And he locks on the face lock, the front face lock. I was like, all right, I'm sold. This guy needs to come back. He's ready to come back to AEW.
Yeah. I won't touch on this too much, but obviously we had like a massive. The whole incident had a massive discussion on like the footage being released, whether it be and a lot of people, which I understand had the concern of, this might be detrimental to Jack Perry because some people took the footage like the chances some people thought he looked like a coward in the footage, and some people thought like it didn't give him the best look. But then from this Windy City Riot show, you can throw all of that out of the water in terms of what it does for Jack Perry. You can have your opinions on the footage, and I have very strong opinions about the footage. But in regards to Jack Perry, he's going to be fine. He's going to be more...
What did the footage make you feel about Jack Perry? Because honestly, I've said it on multiple platforms. I'll say it here. The footage just made me question, why the hell has this kid been out of this company for 8 months?
He didn't... Yeah, exactly.
He didn't do anything. He said something, but honestly, I can work it out. I haven't got Jack Perry to confirm it, but I can work it out of him saying that is more directed to it being on the internet. So for CM Punk to then go backstage when I come backstage and say, why are you doing dumb internet shit? I mean, if I'm Jack, I'm going to be like, who put it on the internet, Phil? Who put it on the internet? So it's free game after that. It's free game after that. Like, and if he said, then after all of that, saying that, he said, do something about it, and Punk's first ignition is to try to punch him, he never threw a punch. He wasn't trying to fight him. He was merely having a conversation with someone who was clearly angry with him, and he was unbothered. So I was like, why has he been suspended for 8 months? It makes no sense.
Yeah, like with Jack Perry, I was like, why is he him being in Japan isn't the issue. It's him being in Japan for this long. But now that, and this is something I've been advocating for, and even me and you have been advocating for back when we were doing A-Stackers, where, hey, Tony, send these guys to Japan. Now, granted, don't send these guys to Japan on punishment. You know, you can send these guys to Japan just because you want to send guys to Japan. But send these guys to Japan because at the end of the day, this is the best out of a bad situation, because what you've now done is that you've re-energized Jack Perry. Yes, it's got a lot to do with, like, you know, reality bleeding into pro wrestling and those two words converging. But now you've got an absolute well fleshed out heel. Because I was in the same boat as you. Last year when he turned heel, I was like, get this guy. This guy has no charisma, no aura. But the scapegoat, I like this. I like that. I like that a lot. And you know what? As much as I want him seen back on AW television, I want this guy to be in Japan for a bit longer as well. Like maybe back and forth a bit longer. I do want to see what he does over there. But more importantly, let this be a lesson to Tony Khan. Please send more people to Japan. Please do.
Tony, if you see him, when you see like the overall week he's had with selling out all the merchandise on his website, he's got the top selling item on New Japan World. He gets this big reaction and has one of his best singles matches against Shota Umino. And then overall, the program between Shota Umino and Jack Perry, I would say, is one of the best things AEW and New Japan have done together, because they developed a program that Jack Perry got a lot out of it. He became this whole new heel character and can now go back to AEW feeling like an established heel and having a ready-made spot for him, because the Young Bucks have already done that, where they've perfectly set it up of they suspended Hangman, they fired Kenny from the Elite, they've replaced Kenny with Okada. Who's the Hangman replacement? Jack Perry. I think it is the right time for Jack to come back to AEW, because it all feels like kind of set up for him, where he has this big spotlight moment, his big moment he's been building to in New Japan with a big matchup in Chicago, where they knew he was going to get this big reaction. And now you can keep his name in the headlines by having him return at Dynasty and help the Bucks win the tag team titles. And that's how you finish the loop of the footage of, you can then in retrospect months later and be like, hey guys, we only played the footage because Jack Perry was returning and we wanted to set him up in the best possible way. So all the people were talking about him, regardless of if it was negative or positive talking. They did talk about Jack Perry. He did feed into it, and it's worked out perfectly for him. And now they can bring him back to AEW, where it benefits the company. And then it doesn't look as negative as it looked Thursday morning for showing the footage.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We're going to, are there any other points you want to discuss outside of the main event quickly?
Before we get into the main event, the next match right after Jack Perry's entrance and the matchup with Shota Umino, one thing I did want to criticize about that whole matchup, it was a great matchup. Like I said, both guys got a lot out of it. I like Shota Umino getting the win, so they're 1-1 and they can finish the feud there. There was no reason for Jack Perry to shake Shota Umino's hand. No. There was no reason. That was purely in my New Japan mind. I thought I saw that and I was like, oh, Jack is done.
Yeah.
That's as a New Japan fan, I know that. But as someone, if you're watching New Japan for the first time and you see that, it's like, guy was just the biggest heel like for the past 20 minutes. And why is he shaking his hand? He gives the middle fingers to the crowd at the end, and that's fine. But then he's high-fiving the fans when he's leaving out. So it's just like, it felt like the mass of scapegoat Jack Perry went down, and we got Jack Perry at the end.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
right after that match, they did have Mustafa Ali versus Hiromu Takahashi, which was a good matchup. Had a scary finish with Ali doing a tope suicida into the barricade and instantly started. He was busted open, bleeding. They went right to the finish afterwards. Want to give it up for Ali's post-match interview, though, that has been circulating online with him talking about how everybody's focused about guys fighting in the freaking fighting over broken glass, but nobody's focused on a genocide. And then he did the long pause. It's like, oh, he just mentioned the genocide. Oh, shoot. Then he says, like, how you gonna have the best of the Super Junior tournament when you don't have the damn best Super Junior? It's just so much passion. This felt like the best Mustafa Ali promo. So if anybody did not watch it, just put up Mustafa Ali. It's probably on your feed, on your timeline, hiding somewhere. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Matt Riddle was another great matchup. I don't like Zack getting back the TV title because it feels too reminiscent. It feels like Orange Cassidy as international champion again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you saw NK or heard about it. Matt Riddle turned into Austin Aries at the end where he lost his title and then just walked away, high-fiving everybody. And I heard his post-match interview sounded like New Japan kind of put the kibosh on his run. So there was a lot of other things going on outside of the show, even though I know a lot of the talk is going to go for the main event. There was a lot of talking points coming out of it. That's why I say it's one of the best U.S. shows they've ever done.
For sure. Yeah, definitely when it comes to one thing about New Japan's foreign shows that I do want to touch on, though, we need better camera equipment, man.
Desperately.
We do. We do. Like it's a thing that we say all the time, but it's very important, especially like these shows. Usually, like as Western fans, we're used to watching New Japan shows in Japan, waking up at stupid hours. So for a show to be at a reasonable time, but then the camera quality to be like below par, kind of does dent some of these shows because they had they had a really like this is the biggest show they've done in the States, but it didn't look like it per se. And I'm not saying I'm expecting WWE or even AEW level production, but I'm expecting something like solid. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's my little mini like critique of like New Japan's like Western shows because I think it's a consistent thing that's been happening for a while. But the main event, man, Moxley versus Tetsuya Naito. I mean, this is something we all speculate. I think this is the first time that the titles have changed between companies in terms of like the main title has changed over. And we all speculate that this would happen, but I think the red herring was that Moxley was very much de-emphasized off AEW television for a while. And then that kind of just strengthened like my idea of, hey, maybe Moxley can do it. And plus, let's keep a spade a spade. Tetsuya Naito, it's low-key cooked. I don't want to say washed yet. I don't want to say washed yet. I mean, he's approaching washed. He's approaching.
He is in the microwave of his wrestling career. Definitely, he's getting a couple more spins. He's being cooked. I think he still has great matches in him, including this one. So I can't say he's washed or cooked completely.
I agree. But definitely like not in the peak of his career.
No, he's on his final 2 years. Having great matches.
Yeah, and obviously big up Kieran, wrestling for Ace Tecker founder. He was not too enthused about the finish of Naito and Moxley, and to a degree, I kind of get where he's coming from. But at the same time, at this point in Naito's career, I don't think a long title run would have done him any justice. And I think I just don't think at this. Obviously, people wanted the title reign, and we can argue the pandemic stole that away from us, which we'll touch on. We will definitely touch on 2020 New Japan. We are definitely going to touch upon that. But the pandemic definitely stole from him. But I think Moxley just makes all the more sense in the world in an era where New Japan's roster doesn't have the star power it used to. Naito's probably the only like star left on the roster. Giving the title to Moxley creates a ton of new matchups, creates a ton of new opportunities. You've got an inbuilt storyline with Shota. Should you want to explore that, you know, you've got a proper like top Gaijin world champion, which is obviously great for any of the Japanese stars to be feuding with. So I think overall, like John Moxley is the more exciting prospect as champion. My thoughts on the match, I thought the match was good. I thought the match was really good. I thought the match was good. I think I'm not gonna say I was blown away. I don't think it was a match of the year contender or anything like that, but nor did I expect it to be. But Moxley, man, he was Moxley, like full transparency to the viewers out there. When Moxley, I was not a fan of Dean Ambrose when he was in WWE. I was not a fan. Like I was not. Like he was my least favorite member of the Shield. And then when he went to Japan, and he debuted in the G1, I was like, what's this that bro's guy doing here? And I was like, hold on a minute. All right, he's good. Then he debuted in AEW. And obviously my Kenny Omega fandom at that point in time was at sky high. So I was like, ain't no way you're having John Moxley, this Fed guy coming to AEW and Kenny Omega's right there. And John Moxley had to really like win me over. But then he won me over. And now he's undeniable. And as you can see by the thumbnail of this video, he's the ace. He's the ace. But SP3, what were your thoughts on the match? And more importantly, your thoughts as John Moxley as the new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion.
I actually thought the match was great. I thought it was great because it had several different moments where I remember it. Like I remember the Moxley DDT on the apron where he spikes Naito into the apron. I remember Naito hitting him with the chair, which busts Moxley open, and just the overall kind of desperation that Moxley fought with after he got busted open. Like he kept hitting Death Rider after Death Rider after Death Rider, just dropping Naito on his head because that's Naito's weak point. And Naito was desperately trying to break down and wear down the neck, similar to what he did with Tsuji, but he's facing a whole different type of animal with John Moxley. He's used to this, even though he's bloody and he's desperate. He's in his element, and that's why he won with a third Death Rider. I just like that overall story. I like the different moments of the matchup. I thought it was great and a nice way to close out this Naito run. Now, I'll get to the negative parts of this. I'm a Naito fan, and I want someone to hate me as much as Gato hates Naito. I'm sorry. Like, this loss puts Naito in rarefied air of a main eventer who never has long title runs. He is in the rarefied air of Sting in WCW, and he's in the rarefied air of Dusty Rhodes booking himself, where Dusty would always win the title and lose it after like one title defense, or he would win the title and then the referee was the wrong referee, so he do the Dusty finish and you have to give the title back. That's how they booked him. And then Sting in WCW, they built him up for the big run against Ric Flair and then dropped it off to somebody else. They built him up for a big run with Hulk Hogan. He loses it to Macho Man 2 months later. Like, that's how Sting's WCW run was. That's how Dusty Rhodes booked himself. That's Tetsuya Naito in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's always made it up to V2, title defense number 2, or title defense number 3, and he loses. And it's just like, why, Gato? Why right now? Because it's not the best look, especially for Western NJPW fans, because for 2024, we're only 4 months in, but we started off the year with the whole big story of the first 2 months being that our number one guy, Kazuchika Okada, has decided to leave the company, and he's going to have the most anticlimactic end of his run, even though he's been one of the greatest New Japan stars of all time. And then the number one Gaijin has already decided before the year started that he's going to end his run with the company. So we're just going to play out, the Bullet Club War Dogs, where he's going to put over David Finlay and the War Dogs. Great stuff. All way fine. Okada not putting anyone over, kind of an issue. But 2 guys are leaving. There's potential for new and better things to happen. No, oh, by the way, about that Ospreay putting over David Finlay and the Bullet Club War Dogs, David Finlay loses right after to Nick Nemeth. So, so much for that. So much for that. And then the company that the number 1 star and the number 1 gaijin just went to, one of their top stars just be our number 1 guy? Really? What are we doing? Do we just, are we just like, to all of us, you were just saying, the company that's been around since 1972, 50 years, it's number 2 to the company that's been around for 5? What are we doing? What are we doing? Is there no one that's saying, okay, maybe this isn't a bad look perception? Maybe. But I respect it and I like the result because it's a risk. And what New Japan needed right now was a bold risk to swing for the fences, to make something interesting out of them. And that's what Jon Moxley is as IWGP World Champion. And overall, his promo afterwards put me with a good light of what the purpose of this title run is going to be. And it seems like a vehicle to put over Shota Umino and make him the number 1 guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So as long as it's that, have no issues with it.
We're good. So big up everyone in the comment section. Alex, big up Alex. Alex says, need more Jack Perry on New Japan, more merch. Let's work with AEW. He says AEW is leeching all he means New Japan stars. Yeah, AEW is leeching all the New Japan stars of ruining the vibe of AEW. Now, we spoke about New Japan's current predicament, and this is the main topic we wanted to talk about. How badly did the global pandemic mess up New Japan's momentum? Because I think we need to, now we're in 2024. Let's flash back to 2020. Wrestle Kingdom 14. We just had the double gold dash. We had Kota Ibushi versus Kazuchika Okada night 1 of Wrestle Kingdom. Jay White versus Tetsuya Naito night 1 of Wrestle Kingdom. Night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom. Naito finally, you talk about finishes the story. Well, we thought he finished the story. Naito finally finishes his story, wins against Okada at Wrestle Kingdom, holds up the 2 championships. Yes, the roll call gets ruined by Kenta, but New Japan is on an absolute high. January 4th, we're thinking, oh my God, we're gonna get the Naito reign of all reigns, and then boom, a global pandemic. Now, the global pandemic impacted everyone. Obviously, we know ROH had to shut down because of the global pandemic. We obviously know WWE and AEW handled the global pandemic the best, but obviously, they are both. One is $1 billion company and one is funded by a billionaire. So they were able to handle the situation well. New Japan were the company that, Japan as a whole, forget New Japan, Japan as a whole, the economy absolutely tanked due to the global pandemic. Like, people don't realize, like, the pandemic hit Japan the hardest. And you can see that within the wrestling, because when everybody came back to doing live shows, New Japan didn't. New Japan, I think for 2 wrestles, so everywhere opened around, I believe, 2021.
The summer of 2021 was the return for like WWE, AEW to live, like full attendance shows. It's funny because New Japan was the first company to actually run shows with fans in attendance after the pandemic, but it was restricted crowds and with rules. And they did that for almost 2.5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because with Japan had so many restrictions when it came to attendance. Like, there was a limited amount of attendance, and what that did for New Japan in terms of affecting their business. The former president, Takami Obari, had said their merch sales were absolutely tanked because a large percentage of their merch sales came from the shows, and that revenue was gone. A lot of the revenue from the live shows was gone, which meant that a lot of the time New Japan were operating essentially, I won't say in the red, but they were not making a lot of money during the pandemic. They were shedding money, which as we go, when we go to speak about the exit of talent, is super critical. New Japan could not afford, when we say New Japan can't afford these guys, yes, the introduction of AEW and WWE definitely like changed the market in terms of how much wrestlers were demanding. But New Japan couldn't even sustain the current salaries they have. Forget about increasing and competing with AEW. New Japan couldn't sustain the current salaries that they have, but because New Japan wanted to be honorable, and it's an intrinsic part of Japanese culture as well. New Japan didn't make any major releases during the pandemic, and that's a key thing. New Japan didn't make any key releases. So in a company where they're hemorrhaging money, they're not releasing their talent, they can't sell merch, they can't have live shows. You think about 2021. Let's look at 2021. Let's look at just AEW alone. AEW were able to do All Out, their biggest pay-per-view buy rate of all time. AEW was career hot. Merch was selling off the roof. You compare that, and obviously WWE are just WWE. I think they had the Peacock deal came into effect around that time, or maybe a year after.
Peacock started in the 2021 WrestleMania. I think the WrestleMania 37.
Yeah. So these companies are bringing in money, actively bringing forward money. For me,
because you also have to note that, like, really before the pandemic, the wrestling business, as far as like AEW, WWE, it was primarily a TV business. Like that's where AEW makes the most of their money. It's their TV deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. WWE were making boatloads of money, but WWE was losing money on house shows before the pandemic. They were running all these different house shows, and they were losing money on house shows, while New Japan, in juxtaposition, was a live events business. It wasn't about TV, because they didn't have TV deals like that. They were on Asahi in Japan, but it wasn't like the major TV deals that you're getting in the US. They were primarily a live events business. Yeah, that's what they were all about. So to lose that, they completely lose the US, which they were expanding and running more shows in. They completely lose that, and then they also lose their Japan business. As far as like the talent contracts at that time was kind of similar to what they are now, which is kind of like New Japan doesn't have a lot of guys who are getting like yearly contracts, or like yearly contracts that are just based on just the amount you're going to get for the year, regardless of shows. It was really like per shows for most of the guys on the roster. So the guys on the roster, despite them not having to release anybody, it was because of the contracts, really, that I feel like they didn't have to do any major releases like WWE had to do.
Absolutely. And absolutely, and like I said, you bring up a great point about like the American wrestling business is the backbone of it is TV deals. That's why you hear Tony Khan talk about it all the time. That's why the Netflix deal was such a big thing, because there's guaranteed money from these TVs. Where New Japan is the events business. It's literally New Japan gain most of their revenue from events, and if you're restricted in terms of the events you can do, the capacity of the events, and we're not going to talk about the quality of the events because of the clap crowds.
Yeah,
these things matter, and I feel like fans in the West were so accustomed to these billion-dollar companies to where, you know, there's guaranteed money up front, where with New Japan, and most wrestling companies in the world out there, the touring business matters. Now, this doesn't absolve them from their booking, because their booking is a separate thing. But hence why when you see stars wanting to jump from New Japan, because let's make one thing clear, even though the stars are going one way, the fundamental thing that I want to make clear, these guys were going in general. These guys, it's not like AEW took them from New Japan and said, hey, this is the only place you can go. If there was no AEW, they're going to WWE. The same way Shinsuke Nakamura did. The same way AJ Styles did. The same way Doc Gallows did. The same way Finn Balor did. The fundamental issue was New Japan. And the number one difference between that time period in 2016, because remember, they lost Nakamura, they lost Doc Gallows, they lost AJ Styles. But I've always said they prepared for the future. New Japan had prepared for the future, and what the pandemic. In fact, even in the
you could really, not to interrupt you, but you could really like pinpoint all the stuff they were doing to prepare for potential departures back in 2016, because you have AJ, Shinsuke, and the Good Brothers leave. Immediately, it was about Omega, Naito, the Super Juniors. That was kind of the thing that replaced all of them. And already before, AJ and them leave, you already established that Omega was the top heel of the junior division. He was the ace of the junior division. You had Naito do his whole transformation from kind of the Stardust Genius to Los Ingobernables into 2015 is where he kind of completed that, because 2015 at Wrestle Kingdom, he's still Stardust Genius, losing to AJ Styles. He did that whole transformation over the year. So when 2016 comes, you could just elevate him up to the main event scene because he's already a well fleshed out character. And then you get later on, just a couple of months later, after Styles and Nakamura you get this viral sensation of Will Ospreay and Ricochet having a match in the Best of Super Juniors. So it totally took away from the fact no one remembered that we lost two big stars in the top tag team after the Best of Super Juniors, pretty much. And then even in 2019, a year before the pandemic, you lose the Elite, you lose Kenny, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes. You had already been building Kota Ibushi. You had already done the whole big change and power shift of the Bullet Club to put Jay White as the top heel of the promotion. Will Ospreay had already been killing it in the Super Juniors for 2 years and had become the ace there. So it's very easy to kind of shift him up. You had already just got Shingo Takagi. So it's like they had set themselves up perfectly where that when the Elite leave, a couple of months later, it was like, the Elite who for most New Japan fans.
Exactly. And even I'll give New Japan. I remember the early part of the pandemic where I believe Will Ospreay won the title from Kota Ibushi.
That's 2021.
2021. Yeah, Will Ospreay, because obviously we had, of course. See, I've removed a key portion from my mind. I removed Evil.
Exactly. That was their first mistake. How do you come back? Because I remember the excitement that I had having months off of New Japan, and to really kind of shift y'all back to the mind state of like post-pandemic New Japan, it was on a high among highs. You just brought up Wrestle Kingdom. You're not even bringing up the great new beginning that we got that had Moxley and Moxley and Suzuki in that great matchup that everyone talks about. And that set up the post-match set up Moxley and Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP US Championship that we still have never gotten. Tetsuya Naito beat Kenta to get revenge for him stopping him on the roll call. And they set up Naito versus Hiromu in the IWGP World Champion versus IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion for the anniversary show right before the pandemic. And we still haven't got that. They set up so many different stuff that we never got a follow-up for. It was like they went dead for 4 months.
They set up Zack Sabre Jr. and John Moxley a while ago, but
and never got to it.
I'm gonna adjust some of the comments first before we get back into the topic. Big up WrestleMania. I need to hear this New Japan pandemic argument because I can't lie. Enough time has passed. Not sure if I'm buying it anymore. Big up Alex. Thinks the New Japan MLW deal is better than the New Japan AEW deal.
What's the deal? I don't know. I don't know what you think the deal is.
The partnership benefit. The big up Navy. The partnership with AEW benefited them more than hurting them. I know Forbidden Door bags were nice. Do New Japan even have money for the next Forbidden Door show? They do. They just can't afford our stadium. So they can't afford our stadium, and they can't. Our stadium is a massive stadium, and like I said, New Japan. We'll get to the Forbidden Door relationship like in a bit, but they both invest into that show. And if you look at the numbers that Forbidden Door does, pay-per-view buy rate, actual attendance, that, put it this way, 50% of that is bigger than what they'd make in any other show they do in the US. Heck, I would even say it's bigger than probably they make in most shows in Japan outside of like a Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, I think Wrestle Kingdom last year was the only thing that outdrew what they got from Forbidden.
Exactly. So when people are asking what's the benefit of the relationship, money.
Yeah.
If
Money, and also exposure. I think that like people tend to like try to like downplay different stuff, but guys, like let's be real here. Let's really think about the past, because I know nobody likes to use their memory, but let's use our memory here. Last year at this time, everybody was talking about Jay White signing with AEW because it was a big shock to us, because all signs pointed to Jay White going to WWE. Do y'all think Jay White would be even negotiating with WWE if he didn't show up on AEW television in 2022? No, he would not. He would not.
I would do one better. Okada.
Mm-hmm.
The whole public consciousness. I know, and maybe the public, and I was there, and I know you've been there in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, telling everyone this is the greatest wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
Some people listen, some people don't, but most people did not give a damn about Okada. Soon as Forbidden Door happens, hey, that Japanese guy's all right. And now you start getting people.
I think it's less with Okada, to be fair, because like I think like there's particular matches that transcended New Japan audience, and Okada and Omega. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned Ricochet and Will Ospreay for a reason, because I feel like that's one that not a lot of people remember that deserves a lot of mention for why New Japan became popular in the late 2010s. It's the Will Ospreay Ricochet viral matchup in the Best of Super Juniors. It's Omega and Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 11, and then the overall series that got a lot of eyes. And then it's Jericho and Omega that totally changed everything until we hit this pandemic.
No, that's fair. I'm not going to minimize Okada, but what I will say is this then. The whole relationship did expose a lot of people who wouldn't traditionally tune into Japanese wrestling to a lot of wrestlers that were on New Japan. So for me, when it comes to, and again, the reason why we brought up to circle back to the original points we're making, the reason why a lot of these guys were going to leave, and with Gaijins, especially, Gaijins have a history of leaving, but the reason why a lot of Japanese talent wanted to leave New Japan is because the money was simply not there. New Japan are still very much in the phase of recovering. Remember, they could only do, I think last year's Wrestle Kingdom was the first Wrestle Kingdom where they were able to actually have no restrictions.
Yeah.
It was the first Wrestle Kingdom last year. So we're saying the pandemic happened in 2020. And the first Wrestle Kingdom they could have with zero restrictions happened in 2023. The extent to which that company was suffering. Now, granted, this doesn't, again, we're going to get to the booking because there were other companies. I will use one, Stardom, who actually reached peak periods of popularity despite the restrictions. So this isn't all just hey, the pandemic messed up New Japan, it's all the pandemic's fault. No, there is some booking, which we will get to.
Yeah.
We will get to you. But there are like pieces of context that very much matter into why New Japan is the way it is. And more importantly, I think New Japan and AEW were eventually going to work together anyways.
Honestly, if it's not for Harold Mage, it should have happened. It should have happened right at the beginning.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Harold Mage, for those who don't know, Harold Mage was the former president of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was against the relationship with AEW, correct me if I'm wrong, SP3, because of how the Bucks, the elite in general, left New Japan. And the elite were very
well. Let's be real, because I know a lot of people like to say the elite. New Japan only cared about Kenny.
Kenny.
Let's be real. Like you go back and look how they booked the Bucks and Cody. They only cared about Kenny. They only cared about Kenny. So he was upset because Kenny Omega was the face of New Japan in the US. And a big part of Harold Mage, expansion into the US for New Japan Pro Wrestling was built around the Bullet Club and Kenny Omega. That's what it was all about. That's what they pushed. That was a big part of the relationship that New Japan had with ROH, who was their number one partner at that time. It was all about the Bullet Club. It was the Young Bucks and Cody being pushed more as main eventers in Ring of Honor, but they can use them for the Japan shows, whether it be Cody in the US title scene, or they get the Bucks in the junior heavyweight tag team title scene, or the tag team heavyweight tag team title scene. But it was all about Kenny and not him leaving and knowing he's gonna leave. Like, it's the fact that you have to have a conversation right before a big show of Wrestle Kingdom, right before Kenny's in your main event with Hiroshi Tanahashi, and you know this is going to be his last match, but none of the fans know.
Yeah, and then even that, like you said, Kenny was about to be a part of the major expansion, and it was heavily speculated that the Madison Square Garden show that they did was going to be headlined by Kenny Omega and Okada.
Yeah. Because tickets go on sale in the fall of 2018. And all the promotion had the Bucks on it, Cody on it, Omega. And if you were like in tune with like how we are on this channel, in tune with what's going on in wrestling, at that time, everybody was like, oh, they got to do the Okada Omega here. They're going to do it for the first time in the US, Madison Square Garden. Everybody got their tickets. That's why G1 Supercard sells out the first day it goes on sale. Before anyone knows the Elite will not be in New Japan Pro Wrestling or Ring of Honor.
Absolutely. So, like you said, that relationship was kind of halted by Harold Mage. And then obviously due to the necessity of, I think Moxie had the IWGP US title, and they wanted to get that title back on, we thought they wanted to get it back on Japanese soil, but apparently that didn't work out that way. But obviously that necessitated Kenta going on AEW, and then we have the spiral that is Forbidden Door right now. But that relationship, yes, of course, it was a relationship I think that was always bound to happen. But I think the pandemic almost like increased the necessity for that one, because they remember, like you perfectly articulated, New Japan's presence in the West was very much off the backs of ROH.
Yeah.
Now ROH died. Did ROH die before Forbidden Door?
Yeah. Because Tony buys it in March 2022, and he basically makes the announcement for Forbidden Door a month before that. So already ROH was dead in October 2021. They had their final show for Sinclair in December of 2021, and then we get the whole 2022.
Absolutely. So New Japan had basically lost their number one.
But I was gonna say one thing. I was like, I mean, if we're being technical, ROH died in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
It died that night. It died as their biggest show ever because New Japan delivered. I was there live. New Japan delivered. Naito and Ibushi, the main event with Okada and White. Those are the things I remember 5 years later from that show. But ROH shit the bed at G1 Supercard. Enzo Amore and Cass in the crowd. To Matt Taven winning the Ring of Honor World Championship, and the other option was Marty Scurll. It's like,
nah, they weren't it. But yeah, the relationship they had lost their major partner in the States, and they needed a new one. And I don't know. I don't think Vincent Kennedy was lining up to. So I think out of necessity that's why the relationship exists. And obviously, Navy brings up an amazing point. Japan is in a recession now, like today. The economy is in crisis today, and if people think that New Japan is going to have it can have a renaissance in booking, but in terms of finances, the country needs to heal before the company does. So at this point, New Japan is taking everything they can get. which is why even you're seeing in Japan, all the Japanese companies band together. Those all together shows aren't for the spirit of wrestling, guys. As much as we like to kid ourselves, those all together shows are not because we love pro wrestling. No, we all know we're struggling. Help a brother out. Help a brother out. Those all together shows are where there's High School Musical. We're all in this together. That's what those all together shows are.
Why y'all think Noah's now working with New Japan, folks?
You think Noah doesn't work with New Japan? You think they're doing it off of the strength of the culture? They are not doing it for the strength of the culture.
Why I think All Japan do a whole bunch of shows with Noah now? Like it's like y'all don't realize what's going on here. It's a struggle out here in Japan.
Yeah, definitely. But we spoke about the economics. Now let's talk about the actual booking. And I would say, okay, the evil nonsense was absolute garbage. Evil was garbage, but post evil, it got a little interesting.
I mean, I will be devil's advocate when it comes to evil. Evil was a risk, obviously. Yeah. It was a risk because he wasn't the second best member of LIJ at that time. He wasn't the third best member of LIJ at that time. Literally, the storyline was that everybody was calling him the fourth best member of LIJ. So you were elevating someone who was a mid-carder at best, all the way up to the main event scene and the world title, and now he's going to be de facto leader of the Bullet Club. It was just too much too soon, and it was too much of a shock. It got a lot of people talking, but then everything that results out of it, where he pretty much had the Naito run from 2016 of you win the title after winning the New Japan Cup, you have one title defense, and then you drop it right back to the former champion. That's what the Naito did. And for Naito, that helped because it was a time of desperation for New Japan. And Naito needed to just win the title to confirm that he is now a top guy and top star in the company. It did not have that same effect with Evil. It actually turned people off from New Japan Pro Wrestling to see Evil. And he's a heel when the fans can't even boo him. It just doesn't work. And that became the kind of the personification of House of Torture and Evil throughout the pandemic of you guys are heel, you're doing heel things, people can't boo. So it's not as effective. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell off of my screen. And then when fans were able to boo again, House of Torture was kind of refreshing. It was refreshing to hear fans actually boo them in their nonsense. But that refreshing course lasted about like 3 months last year, and then it was over. So... yeah, it's just Evil in retrospect. It looks a lot worse than the actual experience of Evil as champion, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, at least New Japan, and one thing I'll give credit for, they were in the pandemic forced their hand, but there were some creative champions. We mentioned Evil. We had Will Ospreay as champion. Obviously, he had to vacate the title due to injury.
Kota Ibushi's first run. Happens in the pandemic.
Yep, happened in the pandemic.
And the best pandemic Wrestle Kingdom was 2021 with when you have, I think, Ibushi and Naito headline the first show, and then Ibushi and White, which is one of my favorite Wrestle Kingdom main events of all time.
Absolutely, that match is absolutely phenomenal. So you have that. I think the pipeline goes Ibushi, Ospreay, then to Shingo, I believe.
Yes, because Ospreay. Because that's another big point that we got to talk about and spend some time on is the Gaijin exodus of the spring summer of 2021, which is a big factor of why New Japan lost some things. Because, like I said,
talk about
2020, you have that first period where they do like the shows with no fans for the New Japan Cup, and then they build to their first show with actual fans back in the building with restrictions at Dominion, which has the big Evil turns heel, and then Evil wins the championship the next night and is the new leader of the Bullet Club. And then I think they did the stadium show. Remember the Grand Slam shows? I think that summer they did that. That's when Naito wins back the title. Then I think they did the G1 in October. That was the first time they did it in October in 2020. And the G1 was fine, even with restrictions. We had a couple of good to great matches. And you have the big, I think the big thing that I remember from that G1 is Ospreay turning heel and joining and making United Empire. That's the big thing that happens there. And then the Wrestle Kingdom, like I said, it was actually 2 great shows back to back with Wrestle Kingdom Night 1 and Night 2. Yeah, Shingo and Cobb. So they were building momentum again, it felt like, with New Japan Pro Wrestling. The couple of shows after that were so-so. Then you had the New Japan Cup with Ospreay winning, kind of a shocker that Ospreay, that so quickly after becoming a heel and getting his own faction in New Japan, he wins the New Japan Cup. And then even more shocking, beats Kota Ibushi, because you're thinking, because at that time, remember, I think it's right after the pandemic, when they start having shows with actual people there, Ibushi announces he just signed a lifetime contract with New Japan. Remember that? He says, I signed a lifetime contract with New Japan. So they crown him at Wrestle Kingdom. You're thinking, oh, he's about to have a big run. He's got a lifetime contract. And then they took the title right off of him and put it on Ospreay.
Right off him. That was shocking.
Then they did that, and then you did the big 6-star matchup with Ospreay and Shingo at Dontaku in 2021. And then immediately after that, we have the big exodus of Gaijin talent headed up by Will Ospreay, the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And still to this day, I don't know the full story. I don't know what's the full true story, because no one wants to talk about that. And that's like one of the first questions if I ever get an interview with Will Ospreay. What happened? Were you hurt? Because to this day, there's like 2 differing stories of Will gets hurt in that matchup, the 6-star match with Shingo. His back is hurt. He has to relinquish the title. He has to go back to the UK. But then I believe Voices of Wrestling at the time came out with the story that not only Will was leaving, but Jay White had left, David Finlay had left, some of other members, Gaijin members of the Bullet Club had left. Some of they had young lions from the LA dojo. They had also left back to the US because of the overall conditions. Because at that time in New Japan, with the restricted shows, their talent had to stay in their hotels for up to 2 weeks before the fucking show. I'm sorry to curse. I'm trying not to curse, but it was ridiculous when we heard the restrictions these guys had to go through coming from the US 2 weeks before you're actually getting paid for your show, and you have to stay in a hotel and quarantine before you even do any of the events. And it was just weird restrictions, and it was just too much for the Gaijin talent that a mass exodus happened in the spring and summer of 2021 that completely, I feel like that was almost as big as a pandemic for New Japan, as far as like what it did for the overall product of New Japan. And it did not even feel like it came back a little bit until Ospreay returned later that year.
Absolutely. Yep. Big Big's an amazing point. I'm pretty sure Juice Robinson started living with Ospreay in the UK. Yep. That's exactly what happened.
Him, Tony Storm, and Jamie Hayter all lived in Ospreay's house in the UK.
Yeah.
Because I think Jamie and Tony were in Stardom, and they also, it was a big Gaijin mass exodus, not just from New Japan, but multiple Japanese companies. And again, I think that's important to recontextualize like how badly these companies were hit. And then during that pandemic, obviously due to that, Shingo ended up becoming the IWGP champion, which was not a part of the plan. That was not a part of the plan. However, I would say Shingo was like, when I think of the champion in the pandemic, obviously I think Roman came back later on in the pandemic, but I think of the best title run, in my opinion, was Shingo. When I think of the pandemic, like champions that helped companies go through, Shingo's in that. I feel like Roman's also there, Drew McIntyre, Bailey, those are the people. But when you talk about New Japan, it was Shingo. Shingo got them through that whole pandemic time being the champion.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've set all of this up. So bearing in mind, I've taken us down this trip down memory lane for a reason. We went from Naito as champion to Evil as champion. Okay.
Back to Naito.
Back to Naito. And then from Naito, we went to
Ibushi.
Went to Ibushi. And then from Ibushi to Will Ospreay, and Will Ospreay to Shingo. In that, we have 4 people. Ibushi, Evil, Ospreay, and Shingo Takagi, who are first-time IWGP champions. 4 people. Now, granted, a lot of that was, well, I'd say Shingo was due to just necessity, but even 3 of those were intended.
Yeah. 3
of those were intended. You've done a thing where you've created new champions. Okay, the Evil thing didn't work out. Ospreay thing didn't work out, but Shingo worked out. Ibushi worked out for the short period, and Ibushi was going to work out.
Yeah.
So when they come, when New Japan start having more crowds in shows, granted they can't clap or cheer, we're thinking that maybe we're gonna continue with Shingo as champion or establishing new guys. No, we go right back to the status quo. We go right, and I love Okada. People know me. Okada, we go right back to the status quo. And I'm thinking, and even at Wrestle Kingdom, I think that was Wrestle Kingdom of
16.
16. I think that was 16, yeah. Well, the main event was, I think night 1 was Ospreay, Okada.
No, night 1 is that's night 2. Okada and Ospreay's night 2, and Okada and Shingo's night 1.
Shingo's night 1. So when Okada wins the title, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. But it's Okada. He's the guy that it can't really fail. But then I was like, but you just cut the momentum from Shingo. I don't know what we're gonna do here. And then, as it proves, they ain't done nothing since.
Like, I'll be honest, that Wrestle Kingdom I had bad memories on because I felt like the build to the main event felt so forced.
Yeah.
Where you had it where you built it up very nicely to the double gold dash in 2020 that set up, all these big matches, 3 big main event matches for Wrestle Kingdom 2 night event. That was the first one. 2021, they tried something. They took a risk and they tried something different with having Ibushi win the G1 and then Jay White win the briefcase from Ibushi. They had never done that before, and it was very cool, and everybody was talking about it at the time, and that created the setup for the double main event in 2021, and it was different, so I was like, great. That was awesome, too. 2022, it was like, okay, Will was gone, but that was for a real reason, so he comes back. He's the real world champion. He said he wants the winner of who wins the G1 versus, and it's like, Will comes back before the G1. And it's like, why is he not in the G1? And it was like, yeah, this feels like forced. This doesn't feel as good as the last 2 years. So that's why I have like a bad memories, even though I remember both matches being great. I remember the Will and Okada match at 2022. That was one of the best matches of 2022. But I prefer their G1 final match that year over that one because of my memories of that Wrestle Kingdom overall. Like the only other thing outside of those 2 main events I remember is Tanahashi almost killing Kenta.
Yeah. And from this period, we essentially hot potato between former champions. We go from Okada to, I believe, Jay White. We go from Okada.
I felt like Jay needed that because Jay had been gone from that mess as it is all the way to the summer of 2022. He was gone. He was doing New Japan Strong shows in between in that time, but he was gone from Japan for a full year. That I felt when he came back. I remember that Dontaku show. That Dontaku show was the most excited I was about New Japan. This entire pandemic period we're talking about was that Dontaku show where I think it was the 10-year anniversary of the Bullet Club, and they had the whole big comeback of the Good Brothers coming over to Japan. They had Jay coming back. They had gone for all the titles, won some titles. I was really feeling good about New Japan and the Bullet Club. That would be the last time I was feeling really good about Bullet Club.
Because even the aforementioned title reign, that title reign from Jay White was absolute trash, and it wasn't his fault. Didn't he have like what, maybe like 2 title defenses, or even?
Yeah, because he
like,
defends it at Forbidden Door in the 4-way with Okada, Hangman, and Cole, and then he defended against Tama Tonga, who beat him in the G1 after the G1, but that was his only defense after the G1.
So an absolutely piss poor title defense. We revert back to Okada. Then we give it to Sonata, which fair enough, they tried something. They tried.
Yeah, that was another risk.
That was the other risk. It didn't work out. My thing,
because honestly, that should have been like the Naito and Evil runs. I said that from the very beginning.
Yep. Sonata beating Naito has way more weight, and remember, people were dying for Sonata. Like the point in time in which Sonata's championship reign came, it was like, oh, I'd already forgotten about my dreams of having this, but I'll take it now. But it wasn't at its peak. Like when Sonata Mania, I'm sure I wish I had Sonata here because he's the Sonata expert. But when Sonata like was really like when people were clamoring for Sonata to be the champion, that was like in the heyday prime of New Japan, and everyone always said that, hey, out of LIJ, he's the one. Like, he's gonna be the one after Naito. So they gave Sonata the reign. It wasn't good. So New Japan did experiment. But then we revert back to Naito. And then now from Naito, we're at Moxley. In that pandemic, what's frustrating is that during the pandemic period, they tried. They had, but then the thing that's most annoying, and as a Shingo fan, is that you saw something good in Shingo. Cool, you put the title back on Okada, but then you have other guys. Because Ospreay's still in the mix. You have guys that you have at least, okay, I know Ibushi was probably supposed to be a prominent figure, but due to the injury and then, the Twitter stuff, he's out of the picture. Fine. But then in the pandemic, you managed to somewhat heat a few guys. You managed to heat up a few guys. And we've had this conversation ad nauseum. I mean, I know you're going to go on your rant about the G1 climax brackets. I know you're going to talk about that. But New Japan did some of the work in heating up guys that weren't main eventers and putting them in main event positions. They kept Ospreay there, to be fair. They kept him there. They didn't give him the major title run that I think he probably deserved post-pandemic, but fine. They kept Ospreay there. But it would have been, imagine just a universe where Shingo's a top guy, Ospreay's a top guy, Okada's there, and then you bring up the Shota Uminos, the Yota Tsujis, the Yuyas amongst that class. We are discussing a completely different product. We are discussing a completely different product. If you had maintained the guys that you, in fairness, kept hot during the pandemic.
I feel like the issue with New Japan is that they choose like 2 or 3 guys to push as top guys when there's other guys who are talented and skillful enough to be in that position. And they don't always go all the way with pushing them. They give them nudges. Like Zack Sabre Jr., who's won 2 New Japan Cups, but always loses when he gets the shot at the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. It's like he always gets nudged. He has this epic TV title run. He loses the TV title all to set him up for a bigger matchup with Bryan Danielson, where he beats Bryan Danielson. How do you follow up all that momentum with a match of the year candidate with Bryan Danielson? Oh, let's have him lose to the House of Torture and eat Red Narita in the New Japan Cup. Oh, let's follow that up with having him win back the TV title from Matt Riddle. So he's basically Orange Cassidy in the end of 2023. Like, it's just like Gato doesn't go the full way with anything. Like, Shingo has barely touched the main event since losing the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. All he did with Shingo is now he uses Shingo to periodically heat up the never open weight division. What he was doing before he won the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship.
Or to eat a random pin for a title defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, he will heat Shingo up and be like, we're thinking, hey, Shingo might be doing something. This guy beat Nakajima at the New Japan versus Noah show. Loses to Okada, fine. We knew he was going to lose to Okada, and nothing. And the issue with New Japan, which is very, because New Japan right now, like you said, they pushed a lot of they pushed the core three, they pushed a core group of people. But I think what made New Japan in the 2010s, which is now like a golden era for them, is that the booking was so dynamic. Where yes, of course, Okada had the longest title reign. Of course, there were people there, but there were people up and down that card, up and down that card, up and down that card.
Just go back. I'll just pick three guys, like, because this is where I'm gonna go to what happened last year with their lack of anything for the Three Musketeers. I'm just gonna take three examples from the 2010s of guys that came up in the New Japan dojo, took their excursion, and came back with an actual well thought out plan. We'll take Hiromu Takahashi for one. Takahashi goes to ROH. He goes to Mexico, has that killer feud with Dragon Lee. But when he comes back, he's now Hiromu Takahashi for the first time with a whole new look, the Time Bomb. We immediately are going to put him in Los Ingonables de Japón, which is our growing, most popular stable that's selling a lot of merchandise for us. We're going to immediately make him the rival for our ace of our junior heavyweight division, Kushida, and he's going to beat him for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle Kingdom. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like a good plan for someone coming back from excursion. All right. Take a different route of not immediately getting into a title picture, but you're going to tease going after a title, but we're going to firmly establish you right after as a guy in here, Jay White. Jay White leaves New Japan out of the dojo system, goes to Ring of Honor, has a hell of a run there. I remember seeing Jay White for the first time over there, killer match with Will Ospreay right before he comes back over to New Japan. And they introduce him at the 2017 Power Struggle, where they introduce him as the challenger for Hiroshi Tanahashi, one of the two top stars in the company, for our second biggest title, the Intercontinental Championship. And oh yeah, they're going to face each other at Wrestle Kingdom, our biggest show of the year. Yes, Jay White loses, but the next night we're immediately going to have him feud with who? Our number one gaijin, Kenny Omega, and he's going to reject him in the Bullet Club because that's going to be the setup for a longer story of Jay eventually becoming the leader of the Bullet Club. But oh yeah, we're going to have a few weeks later, Jay is going to beat Kenny and kind of be a catalyst for an entire Bullet Club Civil War. Yeah, that firmly establishes him as a main event star. But let's go lower down the card. The Temporal Boys. Yes, you know who that is? Yo and Show, Roppongi 3K. They left this company. They go to Ring of Honor, have a random run there where they just are jobber boys. But they come back, totally new look. They're now managed by Rocky Romero. They're now Roppongi 3K. We're going to have them introduced in the Super Junior Tag League. They're going to immediately win that and win the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles. And they're going to be the top Junior Heavyweight Tag Team. You see how all of these things have firmly established. You have Roppongi 3K as the top junior heavyweight tag team. You have Hiromu as a top junior heavyweight. You have Jay White as a top guy. Now let's compare that to Yota Tsuji, Shota Umino, and Ren Narita in 2023. Yeah, I'm not going to even waste time to go over what happened, but it was not as good as the other three that I just brought up.
You have them in a nonsensical bracket in the G1. Where some of these guys are losing to goddamn Hikaleo.
And you built these guys up in the first half of 2023. You have, Tsuji has the big comeback at Dontaku and immediately goes for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Okay, there's an argument you don't want to pull the trigger too soon or whatever on him. That's fine.
Sorry,
I thought they should have, but
even to cut you off, but they had Shota with goddamn KG Muto and Hiroshi Tanahashi at the Tokyo Dome. Sorry, I just had to say at KG Muto, Hiroshi Tanahashi.
And then they followed it up with having a main event against Tetsuya Naito, the next big show. Okay, maybe you could say, okay, he shit the bed there, so they had to regroup on what their plan was. He gets into a program with Zack Sabre Jr. Good stuff. Comes very close to winning the TV title. Then he's feuding with Kazuchika Okada in a 6-man tag team title feud. And he actually gets over in that feud. And Okada versus the young kids, after what he did with Kiyomiya, is over. It's one of your hottest things, your hottest stories going into the G1. And what do? You put Okada in some freaking bracket with Ospreay, Yoshihashi, and Tangaloa, and you put Sonata, who needs to be in a bracket with guys like Ospreay, Tai Chi, and Yoshihashi, so he can get some credibility building wins for his title reign. No, you're gonna put him in the babysitters bracket that Okada should be in, facing the Three Musketeers, Gabe Kidd, and Hikuleo. What? How did that make sense? It's a very easy what you should have done here. Like, it's a very easy way to fix the G1 last year. You just swap Okada for Sonata. It's pretty simple. That's it.
And then we talk about working. I mean, you get Kaito Kiyomiya for the G1 and treat him like that. Do you remember 2016? There was a certain Noah wrestler in one of the G1s. What was his name? Naomichi Marufuji. Interesting. He beats Okada. Then they set up an immediate match at King of Pro Wrestling. Now, I'm not saying Kaito Kiyomiya is Naomichi Marufuji, but what I am saying is that they did a 1-2 booking which led to a match. You started the year with Kaito Kiyomiya and Okada. That feud was absolutely boiling hot. Boiling hot. Okada wins at Keiji Muto's retirement show. Amazing. One of the best squashes I've ever seen. You put this guy in the G1 to do what exactly? To do what exactly? Like it feels like the company, like and to highlight all this, it feels like the company doesn't remember its roots, because we've outlined so many different times in the past where they have set up, paid off, set up, paid off. The setup for all these guys have been there. And with New Japan, it's just consistent dropping of the balls. And literally the G1, because I remember on Ace Tech, because I was like, maybe there's a plan. There was.
I told you. I tried to tell you, Sana. I tried to tell all these New Japan fans. I was like, once the bracket came out, I was like, we're not getting Kiyomiya and Okada. That's disappointing. And I had people like Jay News, Sanal, you. That was like, nah, maybe, they face in the semifinal. That's even better. And I'm like, if he's not in the same block as him, he's not facing him. That's not happening. He's in the same block as the world champion. He's not making it out the block.
Marufuji beats Okada. Like, I have to say, as champion.
Yep.
Champion. And what?
And all the Kiyomiya squash earlier in the year did was everybody thought it was like, oh, this setup, the next match is going to be even bigger.
No,
never did that second match, did they?
No.
They never even did Shoto Amino versus Okada. Never did Okada versus Yodosuji.
There were so many missed opportunities, and fair enough. These man. I don't know if they anticipate the conflicting reports was that they didn't anticipate Okada leaving. Whether you anticipate it or not, that G1 was an absolute missed opportunity to create storylines.
Yeah.
Because heck, I remember back when they were still heating up Okada. Do you know who they had Okada face off at G1 finals? Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yep.
The G1 is the place to build stuff like this. It's the place where wrestlers have losing records against other wrestlers, and then you build stories from there. It's simple storytelling. I'm not saying none of these guys should have beat Okada, but you could have created matchups. You could have.
We would still be talking about what Yota Tsuji, Shota Umino, and Ren Narita got from facing Okada in the G1, where I barely remember their matches with Sonata. Like, it's like the simplest thing to fix this entire tournament is you swap Sonata with Okada, and it's just like this company didn't even care to tell that story. They were on cruise control with building up the Three Musketeers. All the whole naming of them as the Reworld Three Musketeers was some WWE BS. Like WWE keep telling us, it's a new era. It's a new era. That's what New Japan did to us. They're the Three Musketeers. They're the Reworld Three Musketeers. But they're not doing anything to freaking tell us that. Like, at least with WWE right now, with them saying it's a new era, they took 18 months before that to show us they were changing. So when they say new era now, I don't have PTSD to We Are the Authority at the end of 2018 when that was supposed to be a new era. Or when Shane and Stephanie took over Raw and SmackDown and that was supposed to be a new era. When they say it now, I actually believe it because they took the time to build up to it. They should have took the time to build up Shooter and Tsuji and Ren Narita before you even called them the Three Musketeers. They gave them a title that they weren't even prepared to build them for.
Navy, they booked Tabatonga stronger in the G1 than the Musketeers.
Yep.
And New Japan, New Japan has always been about the passing of the torch. That's how a majority of their feuds got over, whether it's Nakamura, Ibushi, passing of the torch. Of course, we talk about Okada, Tanahashi, passing of the torch. Heck, we can talk Naito, Tanahashi, passing of the torch.
I brought up one earlier, Kushida and Hiromu, passing of the torch.
Heck, even within the same generation, Omega to Jay White, passing of the torch. New Japan have consistently been a company where the
guy on the way out usually is putting over the guy that is going to be the person that replaces them. It happens time and time again, and they have done it for years upon years, but they just forgot it in 2023. It was so weird, and I think that's where we have gotten to in 2024, like a perception low for New Japan, that Jon Moxley winning the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship feels like a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, but at least we're not bleeding out.
Yeah.
At least we're not bleeding out right now.
Yeah. That's what it feels. And it feels like if you're going to, like I said, because you didn't do the work to establish these guys like Shota in the past, putting the title on someone like a Moxley, where I think the storyline has to be Moxley to Shota, where at least you get one of the future over, because if this don't result in anything, we are cooked for a long period of time, and this is, again, you can say, of course, them losing a star like Ospreay, them losing the Jay White. By the way, with Jay White as well, Jay White left the company losing to Hikuleo. Like, I think people, obviously Jay White's an amazing talent, but people look at Jay White's last run in New Japan's career and we don't scrutinize that enough. That was bad. Not on his behalf. They deserve to lose him.
You put over Hikuleo and you put over an AEW talent on Jay White's final. Well, basically, you put over two AEW talents and, checking the latest Fightful report, in June, a WWE talent too, apparently, because Hikuleo's deal is done in June. And if I'm Hikuleo, shouts out to him. I've interviewed him in the past, and he gave me his reasoning of why, the hiring freeze and stuff like that talk stopped with WWE last time. I'm saying, I'm really listening to WWE this time based on New Japan's booking.
For sure. So, like, you basically, with Jay White, I remember you give him a title run where he defends twice. One of the defenses wasn't even on Japanese soil, and the second defense was against Tama Tonga. Jay White had to leave that company. He had to leave that company. So, in regards to, like we said, this is a way, and like I said, you were right about something else. Hey, I have to give you your flowers. You were one of the first people saying Sonata should have lost to Yotsuji. And I didn't believe you were one of the first people saying it.
I was so on that.
SP3 was one of these first people I heard. Like as soon as the match got announced, he's like, Sonata has to lose. And I looked at him like he was crazy. I was like, why would you do that to Sonata right now? But like in retrospect, like SP3 comes off as a goddamn genius because that was the absolute move. That was the absolute.
I don't even know. I've never been like. There's certain things like when I say it on here, and I feel vindicated when things come out. You saying that makes me feel vindicated, but also Wrestling Observer newsletter giving Sonata most overrated for 2023. I felt vindicated. I was like, you know what? I don't agree with this, but I feel vindicated by it because they shouldn't have kept the title on him that long.
Yeah. I think before we wrap up, I think one thing New Japan, I mean, they've made ballsy decisions, but one thing that New Japan did in the past that they don't do now is New Japan, so we talk about the 2010s, they were not afraid to immediately put the title on someone. They were not afraid to do that. When Naito came back from excursion, he wins the title from Okada, throws it in the air. Granted, the title reign did not last long at all, but that already puts him in a position to where, obviously we talk about Okada's return. We don't even need to discuss that. You spoke about Hiromu, heck, Jay White. When New Japan, the thing that made the 2010s New Japan so exciting was that they were not afraid to immediately shift the status quo. As soon as Kenny Omega became a heavyweight, what does he do? Defeat Hiroshi Tanahashi. There were constant momentum shifts, it was chaotic, but it was perfect chaos because what you did was have a revolving door of talent. And even another perfect booking, even in retrospect, that people don't see. The top three guys of the 2010s, like you probably say Tanahashi aside, Omega, Naito, Okada.
Yeah.
Before, interesting that in the 2000 and in 2020 2016 2017 G1 finals, Naito and Omega face each other. Those two end up being the guys that end up defeating Okada at some point.
You have them mix it up. Those are really, outside of Tanahashi, those are Okada's greatest rivals.
Rivals.
Naito and Omega.
And then you have them as constant finalists.
Yep. It's pretty simple how you build stuff. It's like crazy. But it's like something that we haven't been getting from New Japan for a while. And like we also brought up a lot in this podcast is like the junior heavyweights and the importance over there. That's died down because there's not the different talent coming in every year like they used to. Like 2016, like I said, Will comes in and you still have Ricochet. You got Kushida, who's the ace. Then 2017, Hiromu comes in, freshens up the whole thing. You still have Will there who's developing more. You got Marty Scurll there at the time. It was okay to be a Marty Scurll. I'm sorry to remind you. 2018, you got Will kind of finishing out, and now he's the firmly established ace of the company. You also have Dragon Lee there, and he's mixing it up. You got Shingo Takagi, who's now in the junior heavyweight division, which led to 2019 with the greatest best of Super Juniors ever, in that Shingo Ospreay final, which was kind of like the peak of the Super Juniors. And since then, really, the only star they've made is El Desperado.
Yeah, that's it. All they've made is Despy, and that's about it. And we get we talk about revolving door with the heavyweight division. The junior division is Ishimori, Desperado, Hiromu. Switch it around. Hiromu, Ishimori, it's a merry-go-round of those three. And
I'm trying to remember every champion from because I think Ishimori wins it at the 2019 Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah. He drops it to Dragon Lee. And then Dragon Lee, I believe, drops it to Will after Will wins the Best of Super Juniors. And then Will holds it until Hiromu comes back in 2020. Then Hiromu holds it until, is it the pandemic? Did he lose it in the pandemic? Yeah. He lost in the pandemic to who? Ishimori.
Yeah. And
then he loses it back to Hiromu. Then Hiromu loses it to Despy. Despy loses it to Hiromu. Then it's like, yeah, it's been those same guys who's been junior heavyweight champion for like the past several years.
This feels like therapy, man. It feels like therapy.
We're getting it all out. We've had a lot on our chest.
We've had a lot on our chest. Like, Navy, I'm gonna end off with this. Navy says they need Nakajima ASAP. I'm gonna ask you this. Outside, we know the Three Musketeers, of course. For each division, let's say I will give you this. Let's say for the junior, for the what's the title that Nick Nemeth has again?
The Global Heavyweight Championship.
The IC adjacent title. That's what I call it. The IC light title. But yeah, the global heavyweight title. Let's say for the junior, the global heavyweight, and the heavyweight. Who are some people that you feel need to be the front runners of each division?
For the junior heavyweight division, I'm gonna say Master Wato. I'll pick like three guys: Master Wato, Yo, and if they can get him more often, Teton. Because those are the guys that I've got me like most excited that have been here on a regular basis. But Yo and Master Wato are kind of like the top, and Kosei Fujita. I would say if you're just going to have me pick New Japan talent, Yo, Master Wato, Kosei Fujita. Those are the three I'm building the junior heavyweight division around. Global heavyweight division, please just put Shingo in there. Shingo could be for the global heavyweight title what Nakamura was for the Intercontinental title, what Naito was for the Intercontinental title, what Kenny was for the U.S. title, what Ospreay was for the U.S. title. Shingo can be that for the global heavyweight championship. Just put him in that division. Him and Finley seem like the guys that you want to have in that global heavyweight division. And then the main event scene, it's going to be Tsuji and Shota. I don't know where Ren and Uemura are going to be. You could put Ren and Uemura maybe in that global heavyweight title scene, or Ren probably never open weight like his wannabe father Shibata. He probably is better off in the never open weight scene. But like, if you want me to put a third guy in that main event scene with Tsuji and Shooter, it would be Gabe Kidd.
That's good. For me, with the Super Juniors, I agree. Master Wato, I've been on the Master Wato was the one. With the global heavyweight championship, Zack Sabre Jr. Zack Sabre Jr. Okay. In that because I feel, let's be even at the peak of Zack Sabre Jr. I never saw him as like world champion. Well, right now I could see him as world champion, but I've always seen him as like in that IC title, that secondary title picture. And I feel like him as a global champion makes absolute sense. Like, he needs to be elevated. Damn, police hands everywhere.
I know. I'm about to put it on.
No worries. But they probably should lock up Gator. He's north in Japan.
That's where they're coming for. That's who they're coming.
That's what they're coming for. But I think Zack Sabre Jr. in that global heavyweight title picture is the absolute move. I would put Gabe in that global heavyweight title picture as well. Just to have some like Bullet Club continuity there with David Finlay, maybe tease a bit of tension, not having split up, but competition's good in amongst the faction, and then that's where I would have like Sanada, because I think Sanada as world champion maybe it wasn't the move, but I think
global is his scene.
Global is his scene, and like I said, the Three Musketeers. Yes, I'll say it. Shingo must be there. Like there is no reason why Shingo cannot be in that world heavyweight title picture. He's a former champion. He's tangled with the best. Like there's that. You need stars. Yeah. So, Graps of Guap. Now put Gabe.
I think they're already doing that. I think he's gonna win the never openweight title at Duntaku.
Make that the BMF belt again. Make them, yeah. The real men belt, restore the feeling, yeah. But yeah, and then yeah, I think in terms of top gaijin, I mean, I think Gabe will eventually be the top gaijin.
I think he's like a year away. So
Yeah,
until then, I would say Zach is the guy in
yeah,
the world title
yeah,
scene.
yeah. That's fair. That's fair, man. But yeah, man, SP3, man. We appreciate you coming on the show, man. Don't worry. You will have the WCW episode of knowledge. We've got that locked away in the vault. That will happen. That will
Ready for
happen.
that.
That will happen. But yeah, SP3, man. Let the people know where they can find you at what you got going on, my bro.
Well, you can find me usually on the Twitter machine at True Hill SP3, but the best place to find me talking about wrestling and doing a whole bunch of content is the True Heel Heat
Mm,
YouTube channel. That is TRU, no E, because we speak Ebonics out in these streets. And we
mhm.
talk about all things professional wrestling, including New Japan Pro Wrestling. We did a NJPW Windy City Riot review yesterday with myself and Jay News breaking down all the action. We do our flagship podcast that covers everything from New Japan, AEW, WWE, the independent scene, Mexico, Japan. Does not matter. We cover it on our flagship every Saturday, 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel. And yeah, we have daily content over there. Got a new interview with Rich Swan that's up on there as well. So go over and check it out. The True Hill Heat YouTube channel. Always appreciate the support and always appreciate coming on here. Wrestlings is doing great things, so support them as well. And thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, man. But yeah, man, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what other topics you'd love us to discuss, whether it's New Japan, AEW, historical content, whatever. But make sure you stay locked in for the other content we have on wrestling. Make sure you tune into the E. Like I said, for a full comprehensive breakdown of Windy City Riot, make sure you tune into Indie Takers. They will be reviewing and breaking it down match by match. So tune in for that. And also make sure you stay locked in for the Flagship podcast that comes out every Friday. This has been your boy NK, man hour, too sweet to be sour. We are signing out. Peace. And have a good one, guys.
Gato